So now I will start a new Bob score for John. By doing this, I click the play button in the top left-hand corner. I am then presented with the Let's Go button. And the first page is the first section in which we will place the missing teeth, crowns and any implants for John. So to begin, I'm going to have a look to see if John has any missing teeth, crowns or implants. And the section we will be starting on is the top right. You will notice on the Bob app that in the top right hand corner there is a mouthful of sextants, 6 sextants, which indicate which sextant we will be working on. So at the moment we are on the green area, so this actually indicates that we are working in that sextant. Any areas that show red means that they are the sextants we need to then move on to. So let's have a little look, John, to see if you have any missing teeth, crowns or implants. Okay. So now I'm clicking the missing teeth, and you'll notice that these teeth go to a very faint grey colour. Moving on, we can actually click or swipe to the next sextant. And again, you will notice in the top right hand corner what sextant you will be working on. It will also indicate a dark grey, which will indicate that's the sextant you are working on. Let's have another look there here, John. Now, John doesn't have any implants or crowns. However, if we want to place an implant or crown, by clicking on the tooth area, you will notice that the implant will go a blue colour and a crown will turn yellow. To remove anything, you would just re-click on those buttons to remove the input that you just placed. Let's have another look here, John. So once we have completed all 6 sextants, you will notice on the top right hand side that the 6 sextants are all green in colour. This indicates that you have completed the full charting for the patient. Now, by clicking on those 6 sextants, you then have a full image of the patient's mouth. We then have the opportunity to click the button in the bottom left hand corner, which then actually rotates that image for the patient. We are then able to give the tablet to the patient, and by doing so, the patient now has a mirror image of their own mouth. So you can actually point out if they have missing teeth, crowns and implants, and this helps the patient engage with their own mouth and become more dentally aware of what is actually in their mouth. So these areas really act as landmarks, and that's why we're not completing a full dental charting. We leave that for our other systems. This is simply for the patient in mind, so they can really actually see and indicate what is in their mouth, and this makes their oral hygiene instructions a lot easier for them at home. By clicking the X, we can come out of that area. Now, by moving on, we can actually click the bottom right-hand corner, which is the Bob score in the interdental brushes. Here we are now able to start the Bleeding on Interdental Brushing Index. So as John is a new patient with me today, I will be using the IAP probe. This little probe will indicate to me what sizes John may need to use. So before inputting any brushes, I'm just going to have a little look to see perhaps what size John is. So as you can see on the Bob app, we have a range of colours. Now this is the Prime range from the Curaprox brand, and we also have the Perio range. By clicking on the Perio button, we actually have the options of the larger interdental brushes. By clicking on Prime, once again we are back to the Prime interdental brushes. You may notice we also have the button Others, which will indicate either floss or some other dental aid than that of using an interdental brush. So now I will actually place the interdental brushes in John's interproximal spaces to find out where there is bleeding, and also at the same time instruct John on how to use the interdental brushes. So since using the IAP probe with John, I now know that I need to use 2 colours from the Prime range. So as you will notice on the Bob app, it automatically starts on the top right hand side. So if we have a look in the top right hand corner of the app, again we have the 6 sextants. At the moment they are in red as we haven't completed any interdental brushing, but as soon as we complete a sextant and move on to the next sextant, that area will turn green. I will start with the turquoise brush for John. I will now input this information into the bob chart by clicking on the turquoise brush button. The information is saved into the top right sextant, and now I will have a look to see if there's any bleeding present. John has a little bit of bleeding in that sextant, so I'm now going to place bleeding in that particular area by clicking the bleeding present button. Now I will continue to the next sextant, and I can do this by swiping or clicking the arrow. I will again place the turquoise by clicking on the turquoise button. And again, refer back to John to see if there is any bleeding interproximally. By clicking on the particular brush area, I can also input the bleeding. I will now click to the next sextant, which is that of the upper left sextant. Clicking again the brushes that I need to use. Referring back to see if there is bleeding present. Clicking on that area and inputting the bleeding. You will notice that in the top right, the area with the 6 sextants, we have now completed the upper arch, and this shows in green. The lower arch is showing red, which means we need to complete the lower sextants. I will now click to the lower left sextant and begin the interdental brushing and bleeding index. I know that John is a pink in the lower left sextant. I can input this brush colour with one click, and I do that by holding the pink button down, and you will notice that all the interproximal sections have automatically added the pink interdental brush. By taking a look, I know where John is bleeding and therefore can actually go back and input the bleeding into those areas. We will now move on to the next sextant, again by swiping or clicking. John will need to use the turquoise prime brush on the lower anterior sextant. So again, by inputting the turquoise, we would then click the button turquoise and hold it down to input that information, and it automatically will infill all interproximal regions with the turquoise prime brush. By referring back, we can see if there is any bleeding that we now need to input into the chart by clicking the area that has bleeding. Moving on to the last sextant. I know that John needs to use the pink prime brush in the lower right sextant. By inputting the pink brush, again, I can automatically Click each area or hold the button down, which in that case will infill all the areas with pink. I now refer back to John to see if there is any bleeding. As John has bleeding in all areas, I will be clicking onto each interproximal area to add the bleeding. So now we have completed our incidental brushing mouth chart with the bleeding index.